Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. JazakAllah khair for being here. And we have been talking about our pains, the collective pain that comes with the human corruption, the Muslim corruption, the political corruption, and everything. But as women, we have a role to play behind that. We have been playing our role, we have been doing our things, but we have to think with a different lens. And this is why I'm here to talk about the resilience, right? And there is one name that actually resonates with me very, very strongly, and that is one of the Sahabiyat. Right? So I will get into her name first, but for the sisters here, resilience is about, falling down and then getting up. Like many countries do, like many nations do, many tribes do, right? But collectively, we do it as a nation. But when one person stands up, when they are in a very vulnerable state and they show that courage, that moral strength, that moral courage is something that really, really inspires me as a woman, and I'm sure to you as well. So I would like to talk about Sumayyah bint Khayat. How many of you have heard her name before? Okay, so do you actually know that the first martyr of Islam was a woman? Do you know? Nobody tells us these stories because these are very empowering stories. These are very empowering, inspirational things that we must know. Today, our women are considered or shown or presented as very small things, right? Small, meek, and weak beings who are just obedient to their husband. They are very suppressed. They are very oppressed. They don't know anything. They don't educate. They just put a this scarf around their head, and they don't know anything. But back then, that lady I'm talking about, the first martyr, the shaheed of Islam, was a lady. So resilience, when it comes to her, let me tell you a bit about her story, who she was, and why I am talking about her being resilient. So Sumayyah bint Khayat, Hazrat Sumayyah, may Allah be pleased with her soul, inshallah. She was one of the most, her story is one of the most tragic one, but it shows us something. It resonates with me, not because I am going to be in that state, because that state is over, but it actually gives me that empowerment. If she could do that, she could stand up back then without knowing much, without having Quran in her hand. I can do that too. So when Islam came, she was one of the first 7 people to accept Islam. And for her background was Habasha, Abyssinia, right? She was from that background, and she was one of the black people. So she was from that descent, and she was a slave. So she was bought as a slave. She came to her masters that back then, and then she was freed. But still, she was freed and unfreed. She was in a limbo, right? So she was in a very difficult situation when she was actually freed, and she was married to a non-slave, but still the old master, kept her or considered her as the property, as the commodity, right? Women were actually also were treated as commodities. So she was one of those. And she was kept like that, and she was still serving the masters and their extended family and their guests and everything. So when Islam came, only few people accepted Islam, and one of them was her son, Ammar bin Yasir. He was the first one. He was a very, very young brother, mashallah. May Allah grant him the highest place in Jannah. He was one of the first 7 companions as well. So he accepted Islam, and when he came home and he recited some of the ayahs, she got scared. What are you saying? What are you describing? But she was so fascinated, and she learned that this is the Kalam Allah. This is the verses of Quran, and there is a prophet, right? And he is the true prophet, and her son has accepted Islam. So she got worried first because she was a slave, freed slave. She did not have a very strong status in the society, and Muhammad, as the prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was up against the most strongest tribal chiefs of that time. And she knew that Muslims in very small number back then were very vulnerable. So she was scared about her family, and she was scared about the state of affairs for Muslims. She was not scared for herself or giving away her life. But then she showed the strength, and she accepted Islam. Imagine the uncertainty, the insecurity, and then going towards that state of, accepting, no, I don't care. I know the state is vulnerable. I know I'm a woman. I know I was once a slave. I'm still treated like a half slave. But I will accept the true deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the true prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was the last of messengers. So she accepted Islam. So when the turmoils, the challenges, and everything is started from the people of Quraysh to the followers of Islam, she was caught. Everybody told, like, she accepted Islam, and her whole family was detained. Her son and her husband, all were very vulnerable, frail, and they were not in a very good shape. So, but then was Sumayya's time to show that resilience. She was vulnerable before Islam. She was weak before Islam, but then she showed her resilience, and she said, no, I'm not being oppressed. I'm not, submitting to these fake gods of the world. I have already submitted to the one and true God. And she showed this strength, that moral courage, that we call it strength of Iman, the faith. And guess what? She didn't even read Quran back then. She only heard and learned a few verses. Imagine, we have the Quran in our hand. We don't have that moral courage. We were talking about the Muslim politicians. Right now, they don't have the courage. Men, women equally, right? But this story shows us how women can also show their strength. So she did not even show the resilience or the power of her Iman for herself, but she also gave that empowerment, that support to her husband and her son. Right? So she kept saying, Ahadun Ahad. He's the only one I believe in. So she was tortured, she was imprisoned, and then the time came when they started half burying all the people in the ground in the hot sand. She was one of those. So she was tortured like that. She was brutally assaulted. She was brutally abused and all that. And there came a time where, Abu Jahl got tired. He was the one who was torturing. And he said, you know what? He didn't want to give up because that will be an attack on his pride, his personal pride. So he was like, just say, Muhammad is a liar. Astaghfirullah. And she said, no. He said, I'm going to kill your son and your husband. There will be no lineage. Lineage was a big thing, right? The family name, the continuation of family and everything was a big thing, like today, right? We have not, left the time of, ignorance. So having a son, continuing with the family is a big thing, right? So even today, women are being stigmatized, not having a son. Oh, you only have daughter? There's no lineage continuation for you, right? Astaghfirullah. Islam came to actually demolish all these fake concepts, right? But still we follow them. And this is why we are destroyed. We are in this, turbulent situation, subhanAllah. So she said, no matter what, I will not accept or say what you want me to say. And then he made a very bad allegation between her and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that made her feel so furious that she spat on his face in front of everybody. So he had a spear in his head, the spear with one pointy end, and she actually put that through her right then on the spot. And he was actually promising, if you said what I said to you, to her, I will release your son and your husband. Just have mercy on them, have pity on them. And she said, nope. They can take care of themselves by will of Allah. Allah will protect them because Allah is watching over all of us. You don't control my fate or their fate. I don't control their fate or my fate. He's the one watching over us. So she did not give up as a woman. And then he got killed, and she got killed, and she became the first martyr of Islam. So that shows the resilience, that shows the strength, that shows the power of her faith. That even when she was a vulnerable state in a half limbo position of slavery and non-slavery, she did not care. She did not worry about her end. She did not worry about what could happen to her. She actually stood tall and stood strength and strong and firm on her belief as the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the story that actually really resonates towards us right now. Whatever we are seeing happening in Gaza, women are getting killed, women are getting raped, they are seeing their children being slaughtered in front of themselves. They're not giving up. They're not saying, oh, you know what, I stop being a Muslim, just protect my children. They're not even uncovering their head. A lot of times I see stories on TikTok and Instagram and everything, I see that women are saying that we go